When you look back at history, the absolute most profound acts of bravery, they usually didn't come from hardened soldiers or untouchable kings. Think about the folks who operated the Underground Railroad, or the people who quietly hid refugees in their own homes during massive global conflicts. They weren't engineered super beings, right? They were ordinary bakers, store clerks, and school teachers. Welcome to another deep dive on The Explainer. Today, we're taking on a concept that is so deeply embedded in our culture, our stories, our aspirations, but honestly, it's one we misunderstand almost constantly. I'm talking about heroism. We normally picture heroism wrapped in a cape, soaring through the sky, or pulling off some completely impossible, gravity-defying feat on a movie screen. But what if I told you that the actual mechanics of heroism, the real-world traits that literally change lives and alter history, are way more grounded than that? Today, our goal is to completely tear down that myth of the unattainable hero. We're going to rebuild it as a highly accessible, daily practice that you can start implementing the exact second this explainer is over.
So I really want you to ask yourself right now, what truly makes a hero? If we strip away all the Hollywood special effects, the dramatic music, the mythology, what are we actually left with? Do you think the people who genuinely change the world require supernatural abilities? Or is it simply a matter of possessing a rock-solid moral foundation and the sheer undeniable grit to stand by it? As you'll see through the source material we're unpacking today, true heroism is not about what you can magically do. No, it's entirely about what you consciously choose to do when the pressure is really on. Stick with me to the end of our analysis here, because we're going to outline a specific list of daily habits you can use to build those choices right into your routine.
Here's the roadmap for our journey today. We're going to start by moving beyond those capes and superpowers, and then we'll break down the 4 timeless heroic qualities. After that, we'll get into mastering the heroic mindset, followed by a look at everyday heroism and sacrifice. Finally, we'll hit those actionable habits for heroic integrity and wrap things up with the endless heroic journey.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1, looking past the capes and superpowers.
We really need to shatter this cinematic illusion right out of the gate. We've got to train ourselves to look at ordinary, totally mundane life through a completely new lens and recognize that the training ground for heroism is literally all around us every single day. The first absolute fundamental truth we have to accept is that real heroes are, invariably, ordinary people. They have fears, they have serious doubts, they have flaws. A hero might struggle with public speaking, battle imposter syndrome on a daily basis, or worry constantly about making rent at the end of the month. Heroism isn't just limited to a one-time grand dramatic moment like running into a burning building, though obviously that certainly qualifies. But more often than not, heroism is found in those very ordinary, deeply flawed people making conscious, sometimes incredibly quiet choices to help others, especially when it would be so much easier to just look the other way. When you look at historical heroes, whether we're talking about the fearless firefighters of 9/11 or the tireless civil rights activists who marched directly into the face of violent oppression, they all share a common baseline. They possess an unwavering commitment to the greater good and an absolute willingness to face adversity head-on. The defining characteristic is basically this: when natural human instinct is screaming at the crowd to step back, the hero consciously makes the choice to step forward.
Which brings us to our second section, the 4 timeless heroic qualities.
This right here is the core framework of heroism. Now, it is absolutely vital to remember that no single human being perfectly embodies all of these all the time, right? Perfection is not the goal here. It's the consistent, relentless pursuit of these 4 ideals that actually matters. When we look at these 4 specific traits, courage, integrity, empathy, and self-sacrifice, notice how they interconnect to form like the architecture of a true hero. And these aren't just modern corporate buzzwords. These transcend human history and culture entirely. If you remove even one of these pillars, the whole heroic foundation starts to crumble. So let's break them down individually to really understand how they function together.
First up is courage. And I want to be incredibly clear here, so let's deliberately slow down for a second. Courage is emphatically not the absence of fear. If you aren't afraid, you honestly aren't being courageous. You're just oblivious to the danger. Courage means your heart rate spikes, your palms are sweating, and your brain is screaming at you to turn around and run away. It's feeling the exact same fear, the exact same risk, and the exact same dread of the unknown as everyone else in the room, but making the conscious decision that something else matters more than that fear. It's taking action anyway, entirely in spite of that biological urge to retreat.
Next is integrity. Think of this as your internal compass. Integrity is the unwavering adherence to your moral and ethical standards, especially, and this is key, especially when there is a significant personal cost, and especially when absolutely no one is watching to give you credit or pat you on the back. It is the raw power to resist immense external pressures. Whether that's coming from a demanding boss, a cynical peer group, or just society at large, integrity is simply choosing to do what is fundamentally right rather than what is conveniently easy.
The third pillar is empathy. Now, if integrity is your compass, empathy is the engine. It is the profound capacity to connect with the feelings and the very real struggles of other people. Empathy is the emotional fuel that drives a hero to act in the first place. Without it, you might be a brave person, but you won't necessarily be moved to protect those who are vulnerable or marginalized. Empathy ensures that your courage is directed outward. It channels it directly into the service of others, rather than just, self-aggrandizement or showing off.
Finally, we have self-sacrifice. This is the willingness to put the needs of others entirely before your own personal comfort, safety, or financial gain. In a lot of ways, it's the ultimate proof of the first three qualities we just talked about. And let me tell you, those costs are incredibly real. Sacrificing comfort might mean giving up your only day off all month to help a neighbor rebuild after a storm. Sacrificing safety might mean physically stepping between two people in a rapidly escalating altercation. Sacrificing financial gain might mean turning down a super lucrative contract simply because the client's values are fundamentally corrupt. When you sacrifice, you demonstrate that some principles and some people are simply worth more than your own self-interest. Just let the weight of that resonate with you for a moment.
Moving right along to Section 3, Mastering the Heroic Mindset.
So, we've talked extensively about the outward traits, but now we really need to shift our focus to the internal, mental framework required to actually sustain this kind of action over a lifetime. Heroism isn't an accident. It is a meticulously cultivated psychology. The heroic mindset is built on finding your absolute purpose in serving others. That has to become your North Star. It also requires cultivating massive, enduring resilience. And, surprisingly to some people, it requires embracing vulnerability. Let me clarify that. This mindset isn't something you are magically born with. In fact, psychological research consistently shows that individuals who can openly acknowledge their limitations and vulnerabilities actually possess a significantly higher capacity to handle acute stress. You basically have to admit your flaws to remain fiercely committed to continuous growth. Notice the stark difference in how we handle failure here. An average response to failure views a setback as a permanent, defining flaw. It's the whole, "I've failed, therefore I am a failure" mentality. But the heroic response to failure? Totally different. They view setbacks as temporary and highly instructive data points. Heroes don't miraculously avoid difficulty, they expect it. They anticipate that the road will be hard, and when that difficulty hits, they transform those inevitable challenges into the very opportunities they use to build their resilience.
Let's dive into Section 4, how this plays out with everyday heroism and sacrifice.
Now we're going to guide you into understanding how these grand philosophical concepts actually manifest in the gritty crucible of daily life. We are talking about micro-heroic acts. At its absolute core, heroic sacrifice is about enduring a personal cost so that someone else can benefit. But the crucial detail here, the thing that fundamentally separates a transactional favor from genuine heroism, is that true sacrifice is made without any expectation of a reward, a promotion, or honestly, even a simple thank you. It is an act driven entirely by principle.
Let's look at what this looks like in our modern world. Think about healthcare workers enduring grueling, chaotic shifts and risking their own physical safety during a health crisis just to hold the hand of a scared, isolated patient. Or think of the whistleblower sitting in a corporate office with a massive knot in their stomach, realizing that exposing a dangerous wrongdoing is likely going to torch their entire career, their income, and their reputation. Yet they securely leak the documents anyway. Consider the social activists who endure public ridicule, arrest, and real physical hardship just to advance justice for a marginalized group. Or on a much more intimate level, think of parents. Think of the chronic bone-deep sleep deprivation, the quietly deferred personal dreams, and the hidden financial sacrifices made daily to ensure a child has a safe foundation to thrive. These are not comic book stories, guys. This is the emotional reality of everyday heroism playing out in our neighborhoods.
Let's move into Section 5, the daily habits for heroic integrity.
Okay, this is the highly actionable part of our explainer. If heroism is a muscle, how do we actually go to the gym and work it out? We need a concrete list of daily habits to cultivate heroic integrity. So here's your practical checklist. Tomorrow, when you're in a meeting, deliberately speak up for the colleague who keeps getting interrupted or overlooked. When you're faced with a shortcut that compromises the quality of your work, choose the difficult right over the easy wrong. If someone is lashing out at you, take a breath. Realize they might be carrying an immense amount of unseen pain and choose to show compassion instead of immediate anger. And I really want you to try this one. Perform just one totally selfless act today. Maybe it's picking up trash on your street or paying for the coffee of the person behind you. But here's the catch. Purposefully do not tell a single soul you did it. Because when you do something good and immediately post about it online, you're trading that action for social currency. But when you do it in absolute secret, the reward stays entirely internal. It fortifies your character. Let those small ripples of positive change become part of your default routine.
You also need to set value-based goals. Heroism is actually built through thousands of minor, seemingly insignificant deliberate choices that completely reshape your character over time. So first, define what courage looks like in your specific life. Maybe it's not fighting a dragon, right? Maybe it's finally setting a firm boundary with a toxic relative. Second, look for concrete opportunities to practice integrity, like actively admitting to a costly mistake at work before anyone else catches it, and taking full ownership. And third, set targets for your year that actually benefit your community, your school, or your industry, not just your personal bank account.
To accelerate this growth, you must intentionally seek out challenges. Deliberately stretch your comfort zone. Raise your hand and volunteer for that incredibly difficult but deeply meaningful project at work that everyone else is hiding from because it looks like way too much effort. Sit down and finally have that incredibly uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding with a loved one, but make sure to speak your truth with radical compassion. Take reasonable, calculated risks that align with your deepest values, even if it means risking failure. When you do these things, you aren't just improving yourself, you are leading by example and building immense moral authority that will subtly inspire absolutely everyone around you to elevate their own behavior.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, the endless heroic journey.
As we conclude this explainer, we really need to frame heroism accurately. It is absolutely not a final destination where you arrive, get a shiny medal, and retire to a quiet life. No, it is a continuous, dynamic cycle of self-improvement and recommitment. This framework builds into a lifelong loop. First, you face new challenges that test your courage in completely novel ways. Second, you take heroic action, applying those carefully honed values to meet that specific moment head-on. Third, you step back to reflect and learn. You honestly ask yourself, did I truly serve the greater good today, or did my ego kind of get in the way? And fourth, you evolve and expand, developing a much greater, more robust capacity for future impact. This continuous loop of action and reflection is exactly what keeps everyday heroes grounded, humble, and deeply accountable to the people around them.
I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. You do not need exceptional circumstances to live heroically. You don't need a massive crisis, and you certainly don't need superpowers. You just need to align your everyday, mundane choices with courage, integrity, and compassion. So what unique contribution will you make to others today? Where can your specific strengths create the most positive, lasting impact in your immediate circle? Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to choose to be part of the solution instead of a bystander. Your heroic path doesn't start tomorrow. It begins with the very next choice you make. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and go out there and make that choice count.